Tantor Audio, a division of recorded books, presents the complete, short guide to absolutely everything. Adventures in Math and Science, by Hannah Fry and Adam Rutherford. Narrated by Hannah Fry and Adam Rutherford.
Hello, it's Adam Rutherford here.
And it's Hannah Fry here, and this is our audiobook.
Now, this is a modest proposal, a complete guide to absolutely everything, but as you're going to hear in the next couple of minutes, there are quite a lot of caveats to that. And the overall thesis has very cleverly allowed us to call it the complete guide to absolutely everything, while simultaneously it will not be the complete guide to absolutely everything.
Basically, there's an asterisk on everything, which links to the word abridged, and that abridged is doing a whole lot of work.
A lot of work there. Now, both of us love audiobooks. Many of you will know us best from our work together on the radio. And basically, we write together like we talk.
Yeah, the writing process for us involves reading it out loud to see what makes the other person laugh or think or disagree or nod approvingly.
Yes, so in many ways, this, dear listener, is the definitive version of Rutherford and Fry's complete guide to absolutely everything. It's written by us, it's read by us in our voices, and it does include some fairly dodgy accents.
Those, of course, are missing in the printed book, but in their place there are lots of pictures and illustrations by Alice Roberts, no less. So if you want the ultimate, definitive, complete guide to absolutely everything, I mean, it sounds like you basically need both, doesn't it, Adam?
It would be remiss of me not to recommend that purchase as well. But for the time being, here is our 280-page love letter to the thing that we love, which is science.
And maths. Introduction. The existence of reality doesn't particularly care if you're paying attention to it or not. That might seem kind of obvious, silly even, but this is a fact that once upon a time you had to learn. Next time you're playing with a baby, try taking a toy and hiding it under a blanket in front of them. If they're less than about 6 months old, they won't pull the blanket away to get the toy back, however much they were enjoying playing with it beforehand. That's not because they lack the skill to grab and move the cloth. It's because, unlike you, they simply don't realise the toy still exists. To their tiny mind, it simply poofed out of existence the moment it vanished. This is why babies find the game of peekaboo such fun. It's why peekaboo is played by every culture, by humans around the world. When you place your hands in front of your face, a very young and immature mind assumes that you have literally disappeared and possibly ceased to exist. The joy in discovering that your existence hasn't been erased from the universe shines out in the baby's giggles when you take your hands away.
Peekaboo exemplifies quite how badly equipped humans are for comprehending the universe and everything in it. We're not born with an innate understanding of the world around us. We have to learn that stuff, including people, doesn't just vanish when we're not looking at it. In babies, it's an important milestone in development called object permanence, something that many animals never quite manage to grasp. A crocodile can be subdued by covering its eyes. Some birds can be calmed by placing a cover over their cage. It's not just that they find the darkness soothing, they don't realise the pesky human bothering them is still there, on the other side of the cloth. Why should their brains care about object permanence? The primary motivation of almost every organism that has ever existed has been not to die, at least not until it's had a chance to reproduce. Most life on Earth is altogether unconcerned with the question of why things are the way they are. Dung beetles navigate at night using the Milky Way as their guide, with limited interest in the structures of galaxies, or the fact that almost all of the mass of the universe is so far unaccounted for. The tiny mites that live in your eyebrows are oblivious to the concept of symbiotic commensalism, whereby they innocuously feed off us. Until now, you were probably unaware of their existence too, but they're definitely there. A peahen has no interest in processing the complex equations that explain why she finds that ridiculous tail on a peacock so irresistibly sexy, she just kind of likes it.
Only one animal has ever asked these questions. Us. At some time in the past 100,000 years or thereabouts, some mostly bald apes started to get curious about pretty much everything. The brains of these apes had been growing bigger over the previous million years or so, and they began doing things that no animal before them had done. They started drawing and painting and making music and playing peekaboo. It's important not to get too mushy about this. Prehistoric life was still pretty wretched compared to today, and survival was still everyone's primary concern. But our ancestors had taken a step away from the rest of nature by considering not just the immediate concerns of survival, but the whole universe and their place in it. However, we are still apes, and much of our brains and bodies is still fundamentally concerned with just living and reproducing. Physically and genetically, we haven't changed much in the last 250,000 years. Take a woman or a man from Africa 300,000 years ago, transport them forwards in time, tidy them up, give them a haircut and stick them in a nice dress or sports casual, and you wouldn't be able to pick them out of a crowd today. Much of our biological hardware is largely unchanged from a time when none of these highfalutin ideas about how the universe works were of much concern to anyone.
Now, what this all means is that our senses routinely let us down. We jump at quick, unexpected movements, despite no longer having to worry about predators trying to eat us every day. We crave sweet, salty, and fatty foods, a perfectly sensible hunter-gatherer strategy, helping us to prioritize high-calorie inputs when food was scarce, but much less useful when there's the option of ice cream after every cheeseburger. These evolutionary hangovers go beyond our instincts. They affect our intuition too. If you'd asked our uneducated ancestors about the shape of the Earth, they may well have told you that it was flat. It makes sense that it's flat. It looks pretty flat, and surely if it wasn't flat, we'd fall off. But it's not even remotely flat. In Chapter 3, we're going to explore in detail our lumpy rock and determine that not only is it not flat, but it's not even a sphere. Owing to its own rotation, the Earth is an oblate spheroid, essentially a slightly deflated ball that is a bit flat around the poles and a bit fat around the middle. From our perspective, the Sun looks very much like it revolves around the Earth. Every day for the past 4.54 billion years, it's come up in the morning over here, scooted across the sky, and gone down over there. But in reality, the Earth orbits the Sun, and it doesn't do that in perfect circles either. As far as we are concerned, the Sun is static in space while we whiz around it. But in reality, the Sun and our whole solar system are charging round a point at the centre of the Milky Way at a bracing 514,000 miles per hour, completing a full orbit once every galactic year, that is 250 million Earth years. Now, none of us have the slightest experience of that while we're listening to an audiobook while sitting in a deck chair.
Curiosity might have marked humans as different from other creatures, but curiosity alone is not enough. When humans ask curious questions about the mysteries of reality, we don't necessarily come up with the right answers instantaneously. There is no end to the myths that we concocted to explain the inexplicable nature of nature. Vikings decided that the deafening sound of thunder was Thor charging across the sky in his goat-powered chariot, and his fearsome hammer Mjolnir was the source of lightning. The Gunai, indigenous to Australia, thought that the southern lights, what we call the aurora australis, were bushfires in the spirit world. Stories of gods and goats and ghosts are still widely believed by billions of folk on every continent. Some of these stories might be easy to mock, but intuitively they make sense, and intuition is an incredibly powerful thing. We cannot help but see the universe through human-tinted glasses. In fact, though, much is not as it seems. As you'll discover in this book, a day is not 24 hours. A year is not 365 and a quarter days. When we admire our star sitting just above the horizon in a beautiful sunset, it's actually beneath the horizon. The atmosphere of the Earth bends the light so that we see it even after it has set. Eating sugary sweets and cake doesn't make kids go nuts at parties. More people die by drowning in the bath than are killed by terrorists and sharks combined every year. But no government has introduced laws on bath time policy just yet.
Incidentally, the best data that we have suggests that children just go nuts at parties, whatever they eat. In tests where scientists gave children food with no sugar, but told the parents there was sugar in their drinks and cakes, the parents rated the behaviour of the kids as worse, when in fact it was no different. In this sense, parents behave worse at parties than kids, who are just being kids at parties.
Whatever way you look at it, Intuition is a terrible guide, and at some point we curious apes realised this. We created science and mathematics in an attempt to step out of our limited human perspective and see the world as it objectively is, not merely as we experience it. We recognised the limits of our senses and came up with ways to expand them so we could see beyond the narrow spectrum of our vision, hear beyond the range of our ears, and measure beyond distances we could see to the unimaginably large and infinitesimally small.
Since then, we've been striving to learn how reality truly is. That is what science is. We've been doing this for hundreds, if not thousands of years, but not always successfully. Earlier attempts are often easy to poke fun at, and not always far from the gods and the goats. Plato believed that we could see things thanks to invisible ray beams shooting out from our eyeballs, probing and investigating everything that they touched. But then again, he didn't have theories of the electromagnetic spectrum or neuronal phototransduction. Early biologists thought that sperm contained a homunculus, a teeny tiny version of a person, and that the woman's job was merely to act as a vessel to incubate this mini person until it was a full-size baby. Isaac Newton was an alchemist who put much more effort into trying to turn lead into gold than into his work on the mechanics of the cosmos. Galileo was an astrologer as well as an astronomer and did horoscopes for paying customers when he was short of cash. Van Helmont, the father of gaseous chemistry, believed that mice would ping into existence if you just stuffed a vase with some wheat seeds and a sweaty shirt and left it in a dank basement for 21 days.
Science has got an awful lot wrong over the years. One could argue that it is, in fact, science's job to get things wrong, as that is the place from which you can start to be less wrong, and after a few rounds, get things right. On the whole, the arc of history curves in a progressive direction. We've built huge civilizations that lasted for centuries. We've changed nature and bred animals and crops that feed billions. We've used maths and engineering to put up buildings that last for millennia and to construct ships that allowed us to traverse the globe and in doing so affirm that it is a globe. We've created spaceships that can master the dynamics of the solar system and visit alien worlds billions of miles away. We've even populated an entire planet with robots. Someday soon, one of us will embrace all the brilliance of the people that came before them and will set foot on that planet and become the first ape on Mars.
All of that is truly worth celebrating. Science and maths are a toolkit, the ultimate shed, crammed full of the most wonderful instruments and ideas, devices and gizmos to augment our abilities and expand our senses so that we can observe more and more of reality. This book is a guide to how we have tried to suppress our monkey brains to see the universe as it really is, rather than how we perceive it to be. It's about the difference between what feels intuitively true and what scientists have discovered to be the truth. Often, that truth is far harder to believe. Your mostly bald ape guides come from two very different domains of science. I'm a geneticist who squints at DNA to see how living things adapt and survive and how life on Earth evolved in all its magnificent splendour.
And I am a mathematician who specialises in crunching colossal swathes of data to understand patterns in human behaviour. Like everyone else in all domains of science, we are merely trying to figure out how stuff works. The mistake that people sometimes make, and often teach, is that science is a bank of knowledge. After all, the word science comes from the Latin scire, to know. But science isn't just about knowing, it's about not knowing and having a way to find out.
Here in this book are some of the tales that offer answers to questions that at first may seem simple, silly, or utterly baffling. Questions such as, what would aliens look like? Does my dog love me? And what does a space death cult that is ultimately dedicated to a forthcoming apocalypse do when the apocalypse doesn't show up?
The questions themselves are straightforward enough. Okay, maybe not that space death cult one. But in working out the answers, we find that they accidentally spill the real secrets of the universe, the ones we can only see when we switch off our monkey brains and engage the tools we invented to get past our evolutionary blockades. They're questions whose answers reveal how little we can really trust our instincts and how far beyond ourselves science has armed us to venture. This book features tales of the universe and how we have tried to understand it. All the big concepts such as time, space, space-time and infinity, and questions such as what time is it? Not as in, it's way past my bedtime, or isn't it time you took that library book back? What is the actual, universal, unequivocal, absolute measure of the way that the present sits somehow between the stuff that's already happened and stuff that's going to happen? The answer will take us on a trip among imperiled sailors, anxious bankers, ancient coral, Einstein and space lasers. But we will also tell stories of why we humans are so prone to getting things wrong and how we get round that. It's about how evolution has furnished us with wonderful senses that can and do deceive us, but also with brains that allow us to revel in the wonders of the universe and bypass all this baggage we carry round in our heads.
It's a book of our favourite stories, tales of how we know the things we know, tales of the fumbles and missteps along the path of ever-expanding knowledge, the errors, egos, insight, wisdom and prejudice of scientists and explorers, the hard work, tragedy, blind alleys, blind luck, and some really, really bad decisions. All these are bits of the jigsaw of our history that has brought us to where we are today. This book is a celebration of how being wrong is the way to get things right, of how changing your mind isn't always easy, but how being prepared to do so is a virtue. It's a journey through time and space and through our bodies and brains, showing how our incredibly potent emotions shape our view of reality and how our minds tell us lies. Put together, these tales amount to the biggest story of all, how a species of mostly bald ape, with its unique and innate curiosity, decided not just to be content with things as they appear, but to poke at the fabric of the universe and everything in it.
Reality is not what it seems, but if you're ready and willing to set off in search of it, this is your guide to how the best tools ever invented let us see things as they really are.
Chapter 1. Endless Possibilities. A stale but not unpleasant smell fills the air. The ceiling hangs low, tempting you to touch it with your outstretched fingers. Along 4 of the 6 walls that surround you are rows of leather-bound books, dusty, creased pages, and ancient ink that hasn't seen sunlight for years, maybe centuries. Your room is not unique. Through small ventilation shafts, there are glimpses of other galleries, above and below, one after the other, endlessly into the distance. Hallways on your own floor reach through doors in the other 2 walls, spin off into other hexagonal galleries, each identical to the room that you're in, galleries brimming with books, each book brimming with words. This is not a normal library. You're standing somewhere in an unfathomably vast honeycomb, a labyrinth of the written word. Somewhere within these walls is a copy of every book ever written, and every conceivable book that will or could ever exist. Forget for a moment these humble words you're listening to. This library is the true guide to absolutely everything. This is the Library of Babel, a figment of the literary imagination created by Argentinian author Jorge Luis Borges. It is the centerpiece of a short story of the same name, written in 1941, about a universe where every possible thing was committed to paper, a story that plays with a single idea. If somehow you had access to absolutely everything, how much could you possibly know?
Absolutely everything. The books in Borges' unimaginably vast library are built from every possible combination of letters, spaces, commas, and full stops, all those that form words and sentences, and many more that don't. This library holds every word that anyone has spoken, thought, or written, and will ever think, speak, or write, in every conceivable order, and all of the random arrangements of meaningless gibberish in between. In Borges' own words, hiding on the shelves of the library, you will find
the detailed history of the future. Aeschylus is the Egyptians, the secret and true name of Rome, my dreams and half-dreams at dawn on August the 14th, 1934, the proof of Pierre Fermat's theorem, the complete catalogue of the library, and the proof of the inaccuracy of that catalogue.
It's a fantastical idea, but the Babel Library isn't just a figment of Borges' imagination. Someone has built it. at least a version of it. In 2015, Jonathan Basile, a student at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, built the Babel Library in digital form, with a few necessary practical constraints. Imagine for a moment a library of pages each containing words of only 5 characters. It would be easy enough, although not a huge amount of fun, to write out all possible combinations yourself.
AAAAA, AAAAB, AAAAC, AAAAD, AAAAD.
And so on. You would run out of ink fairly quickly. Print out the full list of combinations for 5 characters in 12-point type, and your sheet of paper would need to be around 60 miles long. And that is just the combinations for 5 letters, not the 410-page tomes that Borges imagined. Jonathan Basile quite quickly realised that running sequentially through everything just wasn't going to be possible. Aside from taking forever to compile, a digital library built letter by letter would need so much storage space that even if the entire observable universe were filled top to bottom with back-to-back hard drives, it still wouldn't be enough to see Borges's dream realised. Basile was going to need a shortcut. First, he decided to limit his library to contain only every possible page of writing rather than every possible book. This is still a ridiculous endeavour. Every possible page of 3,200 characters built from 26 letters along with spaces, commas and full stops. But at least it's marginally more achievable. Then he came up with a very clever idea to spare him from spending his next gazillion lifetimes typing out the entire library. Like Borges, Basile's infinite library is arranged into virtual hexagons, 4 walls of books and 2 doors to the adjacent rooms, then shelves, volumes and pages. The pages inside are all organised to give each of them its own unique reference. For instance, here is the first line from Hexagon A, Wall 3, Shelf 4, Volume 26, page 307.
PVEZICAYZ.FLBJXDAAYLQUXETWHXE.
Not one of the library's greatest thrillers, admittedly. It's the relationship between the reference number and the text it identifies that made the library possible, though. Basile's trick was to use that unique reference number to create a code that could only be deciphered in one way, an algorithm that could reliably generate a unique page of text from a unique reference number when asked. The important point is this: every page number within the library is indelibly linked to a single page of text. Give the algorithm a reference number and it will tell you what's on that page. Give the algorithm a page of text and it will tell you the reference number. It's the algorithm, not the librarian, that does all the heavy lifting. Without anyone having to type anything out, every page of it is already predetermined, preordained, and simply summoned by the algorithm. Every page already exists, just waiting for someone to pull it from the shelf. The first paragraph of this chapter is in there. If you don't believe us, it's sitting in the hexagon with reference ending 993QH on Wall 3, Shelf 4, Volume 20, page 352. We didn't put it there. It was there already.
WOHN space CHMRWU, a stale but not unpleasant smell fills your nostrils. The ceiling hangs low, tempting you to touch it with your outstretched fingers. Sunlight for years, maybe centuries. .FOX, VPX.KRV, .PWS.
We spent some time crafting that paragraph, so it's slightly galling to see that it's already written effortlessly by an anonymous bit of code. Of course, it's pointless to be annoyed at infinity. There's a page in Basile's virtual library just waiting for you to find it that is made up entirely of spaces, except for your name written squarely in the middle. There's a page with the story of your day-to-day. There's a page with the name of your first true love and how you met, and one describing you murdering your current partner with a ladle. There's a page with a beautifully written story about a dog called Molly, and one spelling out precisely how you will die. There are others containing every possible story that could be written about you, but with one detail slightly off, like every possible misspelling of your name, and also in French, German, Creole, Italian, and every other language written in the Roman alphabet. There is a website, in short, that already exists and contains the sum total of all human knowledge.
A quick note on the Arecibo message. Creating codes that only can be deciphered in one way is a common theme in maths. In 1974, two people, on behalf of all humanity, used one of these codes to attempt contact with alien life forms. Now, contact with aliens will be arguably the single most important event in the history of humankind. The question is, what should our first statement be? Anyone who's ever endured a networking drinks reception will know that deciding what to say when walking into a medium-sized room with people who share the same interests as you is terrifying enough. So what should the message be, global in its scope, intergalactic in its ambition, when announcing to the residents of the universe that we are here? Astrophysicist Frank Drake and Carl Sagan had an idea. They concocted an ingenious encoded message from all humankind, and on the 16th of November 1974 had it beamed in FM from the giant radio telescope in Arecibo, Puerto Rico. What did they say? It's hard enough to get a dog to understand English, let alone announce your species to an alien civilization. But Drake and Sagan were clever sausages, and they figured that there are ways of encoding messages using the universality of maths. Prime numbers are indivisible by every number except one and themselves. That's true on Earth, on Saturn, on as-yet undiscovered planets in the Horsehead Nebula, and so Drake and Sagan used prime numbers to encode their message. The broadcast consisted of 1,679 binary bits. They figured that a civilization smart enough to pick up the signal must have an understanding of maths sophisticated enough to recognize that 1,679 is a semi-prime, which means that it can only be divided by two prime numbers, 23 and 73. So picture the scene. An alien astronomer picks up this strange signal from deep space. After some pondering, it clocks that it has 1,679 bits to it. So it scratches one of its multiple heads for a while and then figures that the next thing to do is lay out the bits in a 23 by 73 grid. And by Grabthar's hammer, a picture materializes before its 17 eyes. On it, the alien astronomer would see images of our solar system, with a human figure highlighting the third planet from its star, our home. They would see the atomic numbers of hydrogen, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, and phosphorus, which make up DNA, also represented by a flattened double helix. And they would see a representation of the number 4.3 billion, the Earth's population in 1974. The alien would see this all-wondrous explanation of a civilized civilization alien to itself, and would immediately, urgently contact its leaders, at which point, if science fiction has taught us anything, envoys would be sent to make friends or possibly destroy us. This all sounds like a monumental moment. There are just a few caveats worth mentioning, nothing major. First, it wasn't really an announcement to the universe, as that kind of transmission would require more energy than is available on Earth. So, more practically, it was aimed at a cluster of stars on the edge of the Milky Way, about 21,000 light-years away, so more like shining a torch at a model village in another country. Tiny caveat number 2. The picture itself is all a bit sort of 1974. We can't actually see the solar system in there. I can't see the double helix. The chemical structure of phosphate? Nope, it's just not there. A for effort, gentlemen. F for 1974 graphics. Ironically, it looks more like a Space Invaders screenshot than a missive from a strange new world. The human figure was scaled to represent the average height of an American man, some telling 1970s interplanetary myopia there, as half of all Americans are on average 5.5 inches shorter than that. And it was out of date almost immediately. Pluto is on there as a blob on the right-hand side, obviously. Then it was the 9th planet, but in 2006 it was relegated to the status of dwarf planet and booted out of the solar system's litany of planets. Maybe if the aliens did get it and decoded the message, they thought, this picture is bonkers, let's give these guys a wide berth. And to round it all off, by the time it arrives at its destination, 21,000 light-years away, in 21,000 years' time, the target stars won't actually be in that location, and we'll all be dead. So in summary, neat idea, poor execution.
Too much knowledge is a dangerous thing. The Babel Library is quite a collection. The collection, in fact. It isn't the only total library, though. Jonathan Basile has also created a library that can...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?